Welcome to the Deep Sleep channel, where we explore the mysteries of the universe and drift into wonder. Tonight, we invite you to close your eyes and journey with us to distant worlds where life has evolved in ways we can barely imagine. Settle in, relax, and let your mind wander as we explore one of the most fascinating questions in astrobiology. What would plants on other planets actually look like? For as long as humans have gazed at the stars, we have wondered if life exists beyond Earth. And if it does, what forms might that life take? Today we're going to explore a captivating possibility: the plants and vegetation that might flourish on worlds far from our own. These aren't just flights of fancy. They're grounded in scientific reasoning, evolutionary biology, and our understanding of how life adapts to extreme environments. Let's begin our journey on Venus, the second planet from the Sun. Venus is a hellish world with surface temperatures reaching nearly 900 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmospheric pressure is crushing, about 90 times that of Earth. The clouds are thick and composed of sulfuric acid. At first glance, Venus seems completely inhospitable to life. And yet, scientists have theorized that high in Venus's atmosphere, where the conditions are far more moderate, microbial life might exist. But what about plants? If plants evolved in Venus's high atmosphere, they would be fundamentally different from anything on Earth. These Venusian plants might be floating structures rather than rooted organisms. Imagine vast, gossamer-like beings drifting through the clouds with surfaces designed to absorb the thick atmospheric pressure. Their leaves might be darker than Earth plants, optimized to capture sunlight through the thick haze of sulfuric acid clouds. They would need to be resilient to the corrosive chemicals surrounding them, perhaps with waxy or crystalline outer coatings that could withstand acidic erosion. The color of Venusian plants might be deeply unusual. Rather than green, they could be orange, red, or even metallic. Their pigments would need to absorb a different spectrum of light than chlorophyll does. Perhaps they would use different photosynthetic pathways entirely, harnessing energy from the sulfuric acid clouds or even from thermal vents in the upper atmosphere. Their purpose would be simple but elegant: to capture energy from whatever light penetrates the Venusian clouds and convert it into chemical energy they could use to survive and reproduce. These plants might reproduce through spores that drift on the wind currents, settling in pockets of the atmosphere where conditions favor growth. They could have symbiotic relationships with microbes, perhaps relying on bacteria to help process nutrients from the mineral-rich clouds. They might cluster together in vast floating communities, creating ecosystems that span thousands of kilometers across the Venusian sky. Now, let's journey onward to Mars, the red planet. Mars is a desert world, cold and dry, with an atmosphere so thin that liquid water cannot exist on the surface. Yet Mars has fascinated us for generations as a place where life might have once existed, and where life might exist today. What kind of plants could thrive in such a harsh environment? Martian plants would be radically adapted to extreme aridity. They would need to conserve water fiercely, developing deep root systems that extend far into the Martian soil in search of subsurface ice and moisture. Their above-ground structures would be minimal, perhaps no more than small nodules or crusty growths close to the soil. Like desert plants on Earth, they might be succulent, storing water and nutrients in compact tissues. The color of Martian plants might mirror their environment. They could be rusty red or deep brown, using iron compounds in their tissues both for structural support and as a form of camouflage against the reddish Martian regolith. Or they might be dark, almost black, to absorb maximum heat from the cold Martian sun and generate the thermal energy needed to maintain life. Some Martian plants might even be iridescent, with surfaces that shimmer and shift to reflect heat and manage their temperature. These plants would need to survive in thin soil with minimal organic matter. They might develop relationships with fungi and bacteria that help break down Martian rocks and minerals, extracting nutrients that plants could use. Some Martian plants might be chemosynthetic, deriving energy not from sunlight but from chemical reactions in the soil, much like some extremophile organisms on Earth. They could tap into geothermal energy in places where Mars still has internal heat. The purpose of Martian plants would be survival in one of the harshest environments we can imagine. But beyond mere survival, they would play a crucial ecological role. Even if they were sparse and slow-growing, they would serve as the foundation of any Martian ecosystem. They would convert inorganic matter into organic compounds that other life could consume. They would stabilize and structure their environment, creating habitats where other organisms could shelter and thrive. In essence, they would be the foundation upon which all other life on Europa would depend. Now let's drift towards Saturn and imagine Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a world with lakes and seas of liquid methane and ethane. Titan has an atmosphere thick with nitrogen and organic compounds. The surface is cold, far below what we would consider habitable. But Titan is not lifeless in the imaginations of scientists. What kind of plants could evolve in such an exotic place? Titanium plants would be among the most alien organisms we could imagine. They would need to function in liquid hydrocarbons instead of water. Their biochemistry would be fundamentally different. Rather than carbon dioxide, they might use methane as their primary chemical building block. Instead of water, methane and ethane would be their solvent. These organisms might be floating structures in Titan's lakes and seas, or they might be organisms that live in the cryovolcanic gels and strange ice mixtures on Titan's surface. They might look crystalline and delicate, like intricate structures of copper or brass, with surfaces that could withstand extreme cold and the chemical properties of liquid methane. They might have filaments or threads that extend into the liquid, absorbing hydrocarbons and processing them for energy. The color of titanium plants might be metallic or transparent, or they might be dark to absorb what little light filters through Titan's thick atmosphere. Some might reflect the light of distant Saturn, creating subtle, otherworldly patterns. Their forms might be geometric and precise, following the rules of chemistry in a methane-based world, creating shapes we might find beautiful or strange. The purpose of these organisms would be to harness the chemical energy available in Titan's hydrocarbon lakes. They might perform photosynthesis using ultraviolet light from the sun, processed and modified by Titan's atmosphere. Or they might use chemosynthesis, consuming organic compounds and breaking them down for energy. They would represent a completely different kind of life, based on different chemistry, but driven by the same fundamental purpose, to capture energy from their environment and use it to grow and reproduce. Let's continue our cosmic journey and think about exoplanets, worlds orbiting distant stars. Some of these planets might be far more hospitable than anything in our own solar system. Consider a planet orbiting a red dwarf star in what astronomers call the habitable zone, where liquid water could exist on the surface. On such a world, plants might evolve that are fundamentally similar to Earth plants, but also profoundly different. If the star is a red dwarf, emitting primarily red and infrared light, the plants might not be green at all. They might be deep purple or black, using carotenoid or other pigments to absorb the red wavelengths that dominate their star's light. These plants might have enormous leaves, several times larger than Earth leaves, to capture as much light as possible from their dimmer star. Or they might have thousands of tiny leaves, each one optimized to gather light efficiently. The structure of these plants might differ dramatically from Earth plants. In a world with different gravity, taller plants might be possible without the structural supports that Earth plants need. On a low-gravity world, plants might grow tall and thin, reaching toward the sky with minimal woody support. On a high-gravity world, plants might be squat and dense, spreading outward rather than upward to distribute their weight. The purpose of these exoplanet plants would be the same as Earth plants, to convert light energy into chemical energy. But they would do so in ways adapted to their unique environment. They might produce oxygen like Earth plants, or they might produce other gases. They might develop new kinds of symbiotic relationships with animals or microbes, creating ecosystems entirely unique to their world. Over millions of years, they might transform their planet, gradually making it more habitable, spreading from one niche to another, becoming more complex and diverse. Let's imagine an exoplanet that orbits not one star, but two. Binary stars are common in the galaxy, and many of them have planets. What would plants look like on such a world, where there might be two sunrises and two sunsets, where the light from two different stars might create unusual lighting conditions? These plants might have evolved to respond to two different light sources. They might have leaves that can adjust their orientation to track both stars as they move across the sky. They might have pigments sensitive to the unique spectrum created by two overlapping stars. Their rhythms might be tied not to a single day-night cycle, but to a more complex rhythm determined by the orbital dance of two suns. Some of these plants might have evolved to prefer one star over the other, perhaps orienting toward the brighter or warmer star during daylight hours. Others might have found ways to utilize both stars' energies simultaneously, their leaves oriented at angles that maximize the total light they receive from both sources. Their growth patterns might be uniquely adapted to this two-star environment, perhaps growing more during the periods when both stars are in the sky together, and slowing their growth during the hours of darkness. Now, let's think about water worlds, exoplanets entirely covered in deep oceans. On such a world, if plant-like organisms evolved, they would almost certainly be aquatic. They might float in vast surface layers, creating living mats that cover entire continents' worth of ocean. These organisms might be microscopic, but collectively they could form visible layers of color when viewed from space. These aquatic plants might use different pigments than Earth's chlorophyll, perhaps harnessing the unique light spectrum that filters through deep water. They might have evolved in such a way that they can move, swimming or drifting with ocean currents to find optimal conditions. Some might be colonial organisms, forming vast networks where individual cells cooperate to achieve things none could achieve alone. Their purpose would be to form the base of the ocean food chain. They would produce oxygen or other useful compounds through their photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. They would capture energy from sunlight and make it available to the countless animals that would evolve to feed on them. They might eventually spread to shallow areas and land, if any land exists on the planet, beginning the process of creating terrestrial ecosystems. Let's consider high radiation worlds, planets close to binary pulsars or neutron stars where radiation levels far exceed anything safe for Earth life. What could possibly survive there, let alone plants? Organisms on such worlds would need evolved mechanisms to repair radiation damage. They might have entire cellular systems dedicated to detecting and repairing DNA. Their biology might be radically different, perhaps using different molecules entirely to store genetic information. These organisms might be slow-growing and long-lived, spending years or decades completing what takes months on Earth, simply because they need to invest so much energy in radiation repair. Plants on high radiation worlds might be incredibly dark, almost black, using melanin or similar compounds not just for radiation protection, but also to build their basic structure. They might be small and dense, minimizing the surface area exposed to radiation. They might have thick, waxy coatings that shield their interior structures. Their growth would be measured and cautious, each cell carefully maintaining its integrity against the constant onslaught of radiation. Their purpose would still be to capture energy and convert it into forms other organisms could use, but they would do so in a world where the very forces that power stars are working against them, trying to tear apart their molecular structures. Survival itself would be a remarkable achievement, let alone thriving. Let's journey to a water world with a thick ice ceiling, a moon or planet entirely covered in an ice shell with a liquid ocean beneath. Think of Europa again, but imagine that life evolved there in the liquid ocean and eventually spread to the ice-covered surface. What would ice-dwelling plants look like? These plants might be thin, thread-like structures that grow through the ice itself, like mycorrhizal fungi on Earth. They might break down the ice using chemical processes, creating tiny channels through which they could expand. They might have low freezing point sap or antifreeze-like compounds that allowed them to remain flexible even in extreme cold. They might be crystalline and clear, looking almost indistinguishable from ice itself to casual observation, but actually alive and growing. The color of ice-dwelling plants might be white or clear, though some might accumulate pigments that gave them subtle coloration, perhaps faint blues or greens. They might sparkle or shimmer in whatever light penetrated the ice from above or from internal heat sources. They might be beautiful to observe if an observer could visit such a world. Their purpose would be to create habitats in the ice itself. They might help fracture and break up the ice, making it more porous and allowing water and nutrients to flow more easily. They might provide shelter for ice-dwelling microbes or other organisms. They might even help regulate the climate of their world, affecting how light and heat move through the ice layer. Though small and slow, they would be working constantly to reshape their environment, creating the conditions for more complex life to evolve. Now let's think about plants on worlds with extremely strong magnetic fields, planets that might be located close to magnetars or in unusual stellar environments where magnetism is an overwhelming force. How could life adapt to such an environment? Plants on such worlds might incorporate magnetic minerals into their tissues, using them for structure or protection. They might have evolved the ability to sense magnetic fields, allowing them to navigate their environment or communicate with other organisms. Their growth patterns might follow magnetic field lines, creating unusual shapes and orientations that an observer would find remarkable. These plants might extract iron or other magnetic minerals directly from their environment, concentrating them in their tissues. They might even use these magnetic properties to interact with their surroundings, perhaps using magnetic fields to exchange nutrients with soil microbes or to orient their leaves toward the sun. Their purpose would be the same as all plants, but achieved through the remarkable adaptation to their planet's unique magnetic environment. Let's consider desert exoplanets, worlds so dry that our driest deserts on Earth seem like rainforests by comparison. On such a world, what kind of plants could possibly survive? These desert plants would make even the most extreme xerophytic plants on Earth seem thirsty. They might go dormant for years at a time, waiting for rare, infrequent rainfalls. They might extract moisture directly from the atmosphere, condensing even the tiniest amount of water vapor. They might have root systems that extend hundreds of meters deep, seeking moisture from underground aquifers. They might even have the ability to survive complete desiccation, losing all their water and becoming dormant, waiting for conditions to improve. Their appearance might be startling, tiny, gnarled structures barely visible above the surface. Entire organisms might exist beneath the soil, with only minimal visible parts above ground. They might be colorless or nearly so, having lost the need for color in a world with such low light and rare photosynthetic activity. Their purpose would be survival against all odds, and perhaps gradual transformation of their world as life spread and accumulated, slowly enriching the soil and increasing available moisture. Let's travel to a world with extreme seasonal changes, a planet with a highly elliptical orbit that creates vast seasonal temperature and light variations. Plants on such a world would need to be incredibly adaptable, growing furiously during favorable seasons and shutting down completely during harsh seasons. These plants might have incredibly rapid growth rates during their active seasons, achieving in weeks what Earth plants take months to accomplish. They might have multiple reproductive cycles per year, trying to produce seeds whenever possible. During harsh seasons, they might exist in a state of complete suspended animation, waiting for conditions to improve. Their life cycles might be entirely synchronized with their planet's orbital rhythms, their biology literally tied to the rhythms of their world. Some of these plants might be annual species, living only a single season and dying completely, leaving behind seeds that wait for the next favorable season. Others might be perennial, but reduced to the smallest possible forms during harsh seasons, barely alive, waiting for the return of favorable conditions. Their appearance might change dramatically between seasons, looking completely different during growth periods and dormant periods. Their purpose would be to take maximum advantage of favorable conditions whenever they occur, and to survive the harsh conditions through various strategies. Collectively, they would create an ecosystem that exists in pulses, active and vibrant during favorable seasons, quiet and dormant during harsh seasons, but always moving toward greater complexity and abundance. Let's imagine a moon with cryovolcanoes, where ice volcanoes erupt molten water and other volatile compounds. The surface would be a strange landscape of frozen geysers and ice flows, shaped by repeated volcanic events. What kind of plants could evolve in such a dynamic environment? These plants would need to be incredibly resilient to rapid environmental change. They might exist in the warm regions around cryovolcanic vents, where heat from below creates pockets of relative warmth. They might have specialized tissues for surviving being buried under ice and volcanic material, able to grow through accumulated layers. They might even have symbiotic relationships with thermophilic microbes, creatures that thrive in extreme heat, helping them survive in vents. Some of these plants might be mobile to a degree, growing in ways that allowed them to escape from areas that were frequently buried or disrupted by volcanic activity. They might spread primarily through lightweight spores that could be carried by the gases erupting from cryovolcanoes, traveling across the landscape to find new habitats. Their purpose would be to colonize and stabilize the landscape created by volcanic activity, gradually building soil and creating more stable habitats. Let's consider a world orbiting within a thick asteroid belt, where meteorite impacts would be common. Plants on such a world would live in constant danger of being wiped out by impacts, yet life could still evolve there, taking advantage of the richness of mineral-bearing meteorites. These plants might be incredibly fast-growing, completing their life cycles in rapid bursts when conditions were favorable. They might have redundant reproductive mechanisms, ensuring that some seeds or spores would scatter far enough to escape local impacts. They might concentrate rare elements from meteorites in their tissues, becoming incredibly enriched with resources that came from space. Some of these plants might even have evolved in the craters themselves, making use of the disturbed soil and unique mineral compositions created by impacts. They might look unusual, adapted to growth in the very strange soil of impact craters. Their purpose would be to colonize newly disturbed ground and to gradually weather and break down meteorite material, incorporating it into planetary soil and making it available to future generations of organisms. Now let's think about a world with enormous mountains, perhaps created by intense tectonic activity or by the planet's lower gravity allowing taller mountains to form. Plants on such a world would face incredible challenges related to altitude. These plants might be extraordinarily too, with some species reaching heights that would be impossible on Earth due to gravity and the need for structural support. They might have unique transportation systems for moving water and nutrients up such vast heights. They might have unusual leaf arrangements, perhaps with smaller, more tightly packed leaves on their upper reaches to handle the thin air and intense radiation. Alternately, they might be incredibly short, hugging the mountainsides to avoid the worst of the wind and cold. They might grow sideways, spreading horizontally across rocky slopes rather than growing upward. They might have waxy coatings that protected them from the intense ultraviolet radiation at extreme altitude. Their purpose would be to colonize these extreme environments, gradually weathering rock and creating soil that other organisms could use. Let's imagine a swamp world, a planet where water covers perhaps 80% of the surface, with vast areas of shallow wetlands, marshes, and swamps. Plants on such a world would be the inverse of desert plants, adapted for wet rather than dry conditions. These plants might be incredibly diverse, with thousands of species competing for light, nutrients, and space in the aquatic environment. They might be floating plants with minimal roots, drifting on the surface of endless waters. They might be rooted but with aerial portions, reaching above the water to capture direct sunlight. They might be entirely aquatic, fully submerged but still capable of photosynthesis in the filtered light beneath the surface. Some might be massive, growing to enormous sizes supported by the buoyancy of water. Others might be tiny, microscopic organisms that collectively form vast visible layers in the water. They might form complex three-dimensional structures with different plant communities at different depths, creating an incredibly rich and diverse ecosystem. Their purpose would be to convert water and sunlight into biological energy, supporting vast populations of aquatic animals and creating the richest and most diverse biosphere possible. Let's consider a world with a thick, colored atmosphere, perhaps created by high concentrations of methane or other organic compounds. The sky might not be blue, but red, orange, purple, or some other color entirely. What would plants look like on such a world? These plants would need pigments adapted to the unique light spectrum created by the colored atmosphere. Their leaves might be completely different colors from Earth plants, perhaps deep red or purple to absorb the wavelengths that dominate their sky. They might have evolved entirely different photosynthetic pigments, using a wider range of wavelengths than Earth plants. Some might not be truly photosynthetic at all, relying instead on chemosynthesis or the energy released by their star's radiation. They might be small and slow-growing, investing their minimal energy carefully in growth and reproduction. They might reproduce slowly, taking years or decades to produce new individuals. Their ecosystems might be sparse and limited, with few organisms capable of surviving in such dim conditions, but life would find a way, and these remarkable organisms would thrive in their unique nebular environment. Their purpose would be the same as all plants, to capture energy and convert it into forms that other organisms could use. But they would do so in one of the universe's most challenging environments, managing to create life where it seemed impossible. Let's consider a world with extreme day-night cycles, perhaps one that rotated very slowly, with days lasting months or even years. Plants on such a world would need to store enormous amounts of energy during their long days, then survive on those stores during equally long nights. These plants might have massive energy storage organs, like tubers or seed pods, capable of storing months or years' worth of energy. They might have evolved extremely slow metabolic rates, burning energy incredibly slowly during the long night. They might be dormant during darkness, essentially pausing their biological processes until light returned. They might be active only during the day, achieving all their growth and reproduction during these extended light periods. Their appearance might reflect their unique lifestyle. They might look shriveled and dried during the night, expanding and becoming turgid during the day. They might have thick, protective coverings to shield them during the harsh night conditions. They might be incredibly ancient, individual plants potentially living for thousands of years as they endured repeated cycles of extended light and darkness. Their purpose would be to maintain life through impossible day-night cycles, achieving biological miracles of energy conservation and storage. They would represent an extreme adaptation to an extreme environment, yet still performing the fundamental function of all plants, capturing energy and supporting life. Let's imagine a world where the atmosphere itself is actively hostile, constantly depleting any free oxygen and releasing toxic compounds. Plants on such a world would need to be producers of atmospheric oxygen, working constantly to create an atmosphere that could support life. These plants might have evolved in isolated pockets where conditions were favorable, gradually spreading and transforming their atmosphere over millions of years, slowly making it more habitable. They might be incredibly resilient to toxic compounds, capable of processing and breaking down dangerous chemicals. They might have evolved with microbes that help them survive in the harsh atmospheric conditions. Over geological timescales, these plants would be terraformers, gradually reshaping their world's chemistry. They would be slow workers, but over billions of years they would achieve remarkable transformations, perhaps even making their world habitable for a wider variety of organisms. Their purpose would be both immediate and long-term, to survive and reproduce in the present, while simultaneously working toward creating a more habitable future. Finally, let's think about a world entirely unknown, a planet we haven't discovered in a star system we can't yet see. On such a world, plants might look nothing like anything we've imagined. They might be based on different chemistry entirely, perhaps using silicon instead of carbon, or existing in states of matter we don't even have words for. They might be so alien that we wouldn't recognize them as life until we studied them extensively. Their purpose might be familiar, or it might be something we haven't conceived of yet. They might create energy from sources we haven't imagined. They might serve functions in their ecosystems that we can't yet comprehend. They might be the first life we encounter from beyond our world, changing forever our understanding of what life can be. These imagined plants, on worlds real and fantastical, all share something in common. They all represent adaptation to extreme environments, evolution in response to unique challenges and opportunities. They all exist to capture energy and convert it into forms that other organisms can use. They all form the foundations of ecosystems, the producers that make possible all consumer organisms. They all work slowly but persistently, reshaping their worlds over geological timescales. Whether on Venus's acid clouds or in the methane lakes of Titan, on distant exoplanet desert worlds or in perpetual twilight zones, these imagined plants represent the incredible diversity that life might achieve across the universe. Life, we've learned from studying Earth, is remarkably resilient and adaptable. It finds a way to exploit every possible energy source to survive in every possible niche. It evolves to take advantage of opportunities no matter how extreme or unusual. The plants we've imagined tonight, on worlds we might never visit, remind us of this amazing adaptability. They remind us that life is not limited to our comfortable world with its moderate temperatures, abundant water, and familiar sunshine. Life could exist almost anywhere, in forms we've barely imagined. The universe might be filled with living things, each adapted to their unique worlds, each serving their role in diverse ecosystems. As we contemplate these alien plants, we also learn something about our own world. Earth's plants, so familiar to us, are themselves remarkable adaptations to Earth's unique environment. They represent millions of years of evolution, developing structures and processes perfectly suited to our world's conditions. They are no less amazing than imagined plants on distant worlds. The study of how plants might look on other worlds helps us understand our own plants better. It helps us think about what aspects of plant biology are fundamental to all life, and what aspects are specific adaptations to Earth. It helps us appreciate the incredible diversity of life that's evolved right here on our planet. As we drift towards sleep, thinking of these alien plants, let us feel wonder at the universe and all its possibilities. Let us marvel at the resilience of life, at its ability to adapt and evolve and create in response to any environment. Let us appreciate the green growing things around us on Earth and imagine what other worlds might grow. The universe is vast and mysterious, filled with possibilities we can barely imagine. Perhaps one day, when humans travel to other worlds, we will discover plants truly growing there, adapted to alien environments in ways we couldn't have predicted. Perhaps we will find that life is far more diverse and creative than our imaginations suggest. Or perhaps we will find silence, a universe where Earth is unique and alone in its abundance of life. Until that day, we can dream and imagine. We can think about what plants might look like under different suns, on different worlds, in different conditions. We can explore the vast possibility space of life and marvel at the incredible variety that could exist across the cosmos. We hope you've enjoyed this journey tonight, traveling with us through imagined alien gardens and fantastical forests on distant worlds. We hope you found peace and wonder in contemplating these cosmic gardens. As you drift towards sleep, let these images of distant plants dance in your mind. Imagine vast forests under purple skies, or floating gardens in cloudy atmospheres, or crystalline structures growing in frozen water. Let your mind relax and settle into peaceful dreams of these alien worlds. Thank you for joining us here on the Deep Sleep channel. We're so glad you chose to spend this time with us, exploring the mysteries of the universe and the endless possibilities of life across the cosmos. We hope this journey has calmed and centered you, preparing you for a wonderful, restful sleep. As you close your eyes and drift away, we wish you the most peaceful and restorative sleep. May you drift through dreams of distant worlds and alien gardens. May you rest deeply and wake refreshed. From all of us here at the Deep Sleep channel, we bid you good night and sweet dreams.